This is Fotosyntech. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Grower. You're probably already noticing we've got a bit of a different setup this week. Full frame, looking a little better, different camera, sounding maybe better, different, not the same. The reason? Well, due to a scheduling issue, the pre-planned guest for this week couldn't make it, and of course, to do the only thing logical, I thought I'd be as narcissistic as possible and interview myself. So that being said, I would like to welcome me to the show. Matt, welcome!
Hey, thanks for having me. Gotta say, huge fan of the show. Stoked to be here, so yeah, let's talk about growing.
Alright, thanks Matt. Happy to have you here, but before we go any further, a couple of housekeeping items, of course. Want to give a big shout out, of course, to Mars Hydro, sponsor of the channel. Mars, love you guys, love everything that you do for me. And of course, if you'd like to help me out, help out the channel a little bit, if you like what we're doing here, head on down to the Patreon and the links below. You can send your love a few dollars a month. Gets you to draw some pretty cool prizes too. Last month we gave away well over, I think it was about $300 worth of stuff just to the Patreons alone. So head on over there. Anyway, that being said, let's talk to myself about growing. Matt, break it down for me, dude. Life story, 60 seconds or less.
Life story, eh? Well, I'm born and raised here in Calgary, Alberta, where I live. I'm 44 years old. I got 3 kids. I got a wife. Got a couple of cats. Got a dog. And I really, really enjoy gardening. I haven't always been in cannabis gardening. It's only been legal here in Canada for just under 3 years. But since then, I've really dove in both feet. I've always been into gardening. As you can see behind me, I've got the huge garden here in the backyard. And anybody who follows my channel knows that I've also got the big garden up the front. And I do a bunch of stuff indoors as well. I love gardening. It's one of my few pleasures in life.
Terribly interesting, and I love gardening myself. I think it's a fantastic hobby. But now I wanted to talk specifically about your grow style. Tell me about how you started out, and how you ended up where you are now. I believe you're into organics?
To go back before I even started off doing the indoor cannabis stuff, out here in the garden, dirt and Miracle-Gro. And even then, I didn't even use a lot of Miracle-Gro. And, looking back in hindsight, I did a lot of things not great. So I was really into more of the synthetic feeding and whatnot early on. And when I got into, doing the indoor cannabis stuff, it was, what's the synthetic nutrients available? Because that's kind of what I thought was available. That's what I thought was the right way to do it. So, I tried some general hydroponics, tried some advanced nutrients. And while I had measurable success from the different lines, to me, mixing a bunch of bottles, pHing, adding in your CalMag, doing all that sort of stuff, I didn't like it. It didn't feel natural. And I happened to be watching YouTube and saw this video where the Mendo Dope guys went and visited somebody called Minnesota Nice, and this was my first introduction to to real organic, no-till style gardening. And this guy was doing crazy stuff, aloe gel for cloning, just making your own super soils. It just really, really started to make me think, there's different ways to do this. And of course started watching a lot of these Mr. Canucks Grow videos, as I'm sure anybody who watches YouTube videos knows. The dude grows really nice looking plants, and he does it more or less organically. He's definitely not no-till, but he does do the cocoa, he does do the dry amendments, and his famous pH of 6.2 to 6.8, which I don't necessarily agree with, but of course I don't really know what he's starting with for his water anyway, so I digress. The fact of the matter is, I think organic's probably the best way to grow, but that's my opinion, and that's the way that I grow. Why? Because it works for me.
Tell me now about what your biggest failure as a grower has been. When did things go off the rails, not work so well? Perhaps something related to a hermaphrodite?
My biggest failure as a grower. At the beginning of this year, end of last year, I had a Skittles plant that, without me realizing it, full on hermed. I mean, hermed bad. I didn't notice it until I'd actually pulled the plant when it was all done, but most of the bottom branches had a whole bunch of little pollen sacs that had popped open towards the back in the corner where you didn't really see, and that seeded my entire run. It was bad. Like I lost basically all the plants. I mean, I got some product out of it, but it certainly wasn't a great product. And what that's really taught me here is to make sure that, you know, especially those first couple weeks of flower, you have to be super, super vigilant. Keep an eye on those plants, on the lowers, anywhere that you can see, because you don't know if it's going to hermy on you. And that's the thing, especially with some of these genetics nowadays, unless you're growing a true female or true male plant, you know, you could end up with something weird happening. So I hope nobody ever has to go through that.
I mean, let's face it, this is just kind of weird I'm talking to myself, but hey, we're having fun with it. That being said, Matt, tell me about your favorite tool in the grow room and why it is.
Anybody who watches my channel knows I really like the Canopyclips for training. They're just an excellent device. Allows you to get in there. You can train an entire plant out in about 5 minutes. They don't take any time to work with. They allow you to spread out your canopy, and it's a really good way to train your plants because they're quick. And you know, they're, as far as I'm concerned, somewhat sustainable in terms of they're 3D printed, they're pretty durable, and you know, they don't have to come all the way from China because, you know, the guy who makes them, well, he's not too far from me. That and my Chapin sprayer. I dig that Chapin sprayer. That thing is awesome.
It's legal here in Canada, it's lovely here in Canada, but down in the States they don't have the same luxury, even though things are changing. Hopefully sooner than later and for the better. Tell me about your thoughts on prohibition.
Yeah, prohibition's an interesting one. Of course, here in Canada, we're fully legal, have been now for just about 3 years. Beautiful thing. There's been some bumps on the road, and for the most part, I think Canada's done a pretty decent job of rolling things out, with the exception of things like Quebec and Winnipeg there, where, or I should say Winnipeg, Quebec and Manitoba, where you can't do home grows. Like, come on, get in the know, guys. Otherwise, I know that things are slowly moving forward in the U.S. It looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, over 50% of the states have legalization of some form, and things are continuing to move on down there. But it's not until it happens at a federal level that we're really going to see the mass benefits. And things could happen, you know, sooner than later. It looks like they're trying to push for it, but I'm going to go with what Chad Westport said on the show there a little while back, talking about until big money comes into it, until corporate wants it legal, it won't be legal. But when corporate does, I mean, you know, starting to hear rumblings about Mr. Bezos there and his wanting to get into the cannabis market, you know, means it could happen a lot sooner than later. I'm hoping it is sooner than later because, you know, I'd just like to be able to send stuff across the border with, you know, the viewers down there.
Flipping it around, let's talk about that best grow and how it ended up being that best grow.
What was my best grow? You know, I'll be honest, I don't think I've had it yet. I've had some really good grows and had some really bad grows. You know, I've faced bugs, I've had issues with, you know, fusarium in one plant there. I'm encountering some WPM, some white powdery mildew on the autos here behind me. So I've had challenges, and I've had some great results too. I mean, the Granddaddy Purple that I had from ILGM, that thing yielded, well, both plants yielded about 8 ounces untrimmed, just under around 7 trimmed, but it was still like really, really nice bud, really, really nice plants. But I don't feel like I've hit that synergy yet where, you know, the room's dialed in, the genetics are there, the mix is perfect. I'm getting close. Like, things are really starting to hit off the way that I'd like them to, but would I call any of them my best grow? Probably not yet. So, you know, continuous improvement, right?
No, it's good to think about it like that because, you know, keeping humble about it means that you're always going to continue to try and refine and hone your skills, become a better grower. I mean, you can't stop learning. There's so many things to learn about how to grow this great plant that we love. Now, let's talk about what you think more people should know about or should be doing more of when growing cannabis.
I think it's really just the differences between organics and synthetics. You see a lot of growers come up in the synthetic world. They're using the bottles, they're pHing, they're letting the pot dry out, they're doing a flush feed. It works well for them, but then they want to start switching over to organics, and it's a different ball game. I've recently done videos on this. You're aware because you shot them and whatnot, but it's talking about how to properly water an organic system, and understanding that it's about maintaining that moisture level in your system, not letting things dry out so you can water again and have that good uptake of those nutrients, because the plants are being fed completely different. So I think, yeah, I mean, if you want to make that switch over to organics, you have to understand that techniques are different as well. It's not just changing, what you're putting the plant in.
Bugs, the bane to any grower, of course. We should all be practicing some sort of integrated pest management system. Can you tell me more about what you do around pests? Some of the stuff that you've already talked about already.
Yeah, bugs. I've got a bunch of different ways that I approach IPM. First and foremost, beneficials. Got lots of beneficials in the system. I've got rove beetles, I've got Stratiolaelap simitus, I've got nematodes, I've got some cucumeris, and I couldn't tell you what the populations are right now, or if they're being ineffective. I've got a little bit of a fungus gnat thing, but I've always kind of had something like that going, in the sense that you've got to have something bad in the system to make the beneficials happy. The beneficials have to have something to eat, right? So fungus gnat larvae, stuff like that, means that you do have an active system. Otherwise, get into sprays. Neem oil, insect frass, those are the ones I like to alternate between. And if you've not used insect frass, good God, that stuff stinks. It's just foul. But I think the main thing is to have a few different methods, rotate between them, and make sure that you're staying on top of things, because it's a heck of a lot easier to be preventative than to turn around and battle something like spider mites because they've taken over your garden.
Focusing on industry now, what could they be doing more of to help out the home grower?
There's a lot of things that industry could be doing more to help home growers. I could go for the obvious answer and make things cheaper. And there's nothing wrong with that as an answer. A lot of growers that we've had on the show have said that. But to me, it's more of make things more accessible. And when I say that, I'm talking about having that entry-level option. Yeah, the cheaper option, but also maybe not all the bells and whistles. Maybe something that's a little more modular that you can add into. I'd love to see modular lights that you could build out. Making things more approachable so that that person starting out can get in there and buy, the basics and whatnot.
Tell me what you mean by approachable.
Well, when I say approachable, I mean make it so the information is easier to find. Explain why the specifications that are important are the specifications that are important. I don't think industry does enough of that.
Back into the grow now, talking about those favorite strains, of course. Tell me, which ones are your favorite and why? What do you try to grow what you grow, and what are you looking for?
Strains to grow, definitely good squishers. Anyone who follows the channel knows that I'm into rosin pressing. It's my primary mode of enjoying cannabis. And to that point, I want flavor. I want rich terpene profiles. I really like the fruity strains, but I'm definitely akin to a cheesy, funky, gassy strain. Golden Goat, if I could find it. Oh, I'd love to get some of that again. Just the stanky, dankiest cheese funk that you've ever had. But no, I want something that's gonna give a nice good yield, big fat colas, super terpy profile. I really like the fruity stuff, like I said, but ultimately something that squishes good. And when I say that, a flower squish of more than 20%, and if I could do a hash return of more than 10, whew, I'd be banging. But I don't know. It's lots of different strains out there too. A lot of these new hype strains and whatnot, I've been referring to them as. And the thing there is to not get caught up, even though I do myself. And it's, I don't know, you see the stuff, you see some of these guys on the YouTube channels growing some of these amazing strains, and then you want to try them out yourself. And my concern is you're not going to have similar results, because a lot of these ones that we're finding nowadays, these cool new crosses are F1s. And if you're not familiar with that, it's basically the first generation cross. They've taken, you know, the banana buttercups, they've taken the sunset sherbet, and they've banged them together and made this nana sorbet, which I'm actually running right now for the first time. I've got 3 beans going in the grow. But the idea is I don't know what I'm going to get out of that because it is an F1. It's that first generation, so I mean, I could have wildly different results. So that's the thing, to be able to grow some of these hype strains and grow the same plant that you see some of these, you know, big growers doing, it's going to be tough. You're not going to get the same potentially return that you're seeing there, even if your grow is on point.
What about right now in the grow room? What do you have going on in there? Tell us about your current grow.
Well, I just touched on it. I just talked about nana sorbet. We're doing a little mini pheno hunt. Otherwise, well, just talking about outside here, I've got wedding thrasher and pink Panama. Wedding thrasher is an auto from Wildwood. The pink Panama is from Mephisto. In the flower room, I've got critical mass. I've got orange dream, sticky sheets. What was it? Oh, I can't remember the name of it there. Anyway, it's the Laughing Buddha Sour Diesel Cross. We've also got a couple of the JMOs growing out, Cheese Dog, Maui Wowie, a whole bunch of flower. And then for beans, I've just recently popped some blueberry CBD. We got the nana sorbet and apple fritters. Those ones are from Square One. Me talking about hype strains there, right? And of course, I've got to grow some myself, but I mean, come on, have you seen some of these strains? Otherwise, yeah, we're also doing some blackberry kush, some mango kush, and I think there's one other that I can't remember. But again, setting up to do just another little mini hunt here. So a lot going on, always something going on in the grow. Very, very busy, and just looking for that good mom, that good squisher that I can, you know, get lots of yield off of.
What about to the new grower, Matt? What if somebody asked you for some advice on starting out? What would be some of the things that you'd like to tell them?
There's a lot of things I'd like to tell a first-time grower. You know, buy the best light that you can afford at the time. Make sure you've got a really nice dark space if you're growing photos. But really, at the end of the day, it's a plant. You gotta let it do its thing. You gotta let it grow. There's going to be potential challenges. There's going to be pest pressure. There's going to be nutrient deficiencies. There's always going to be something that's going to challenge your skills as a grower. And if you start getting stressed out every time you get one of these challenges, you're probably not going to get very far. You're going to eventually quit and wonder why you started to begin with. But really, the big thing is to take each grow in stride. If you make a mistake, learn from it, and don't be afraid to experiment. That's one thing I love to do. I like to try different things out, try different recipes, try different media, and over the last nearly 3 years, I've finally settled into something, a system that I think works for me. And I talked about it before, how I started with bottles and moved into organics. The thing about it is there's so many different ways to grow this plant. Find the way that works for you. Don't be afraid to experiment, but let the thing grow and don't get stressed out if you do hit a challenge.
Back to talking about equipment, I mean, we touched on it a little bit before, with what your favorite grow tool is, but what about just products in general? Is there something that you'd like to make a recommendation for? Something that you feel is a favorite in the grow room?
Without a doubt, Dino mycorrhiza. This was probably one of the biggest aha moments when I was growing, when I first used mycorrhiza in the grow room for the first time, because I've said this before, it screwed up my grow. It actually messed up my timetable by a couple weeks because the plants got so big so fast. And for those not familiar, mycorrhiza, it's a beneficial beneficial fungi, I should say, that attaches itself to the roots and allows for better water, better nutrient uptake, better plants, bigger plants. So yeah, no, definitely get some Dino Myco. Try that on your plants. There's other products out there too, like Great White. I've even got one that I use for the giant pumpkin here. But to digress, Myco for sure, some form of mycorrhiza, and yeah, just watch what it does to your plants. Do a comparison grow if you're concerned.
Matt, it's been stellar chatting with you, even though it has been a bit one-sided. I don't know. Hey, guys, I had fun with this one because, you know, even though I sit here and interview a lot of people, I always think about what would I answer to these questions. That being said, if you're already here watching me, you know how to find me, but perhaps you're not following me on the Instagram at Fotosyntech, and I've got a Discord channel. If you'd like to join, a lot of real growers helping you out, lots of experience and whatnot, and we're definitely there to help you if you're just getting started out. But to get on the Discord, you got to email me, photosyntech1@gmail.com. That being said, let's do the last little bit of questions here. Matt, tell me, what do you think the next big thing is for cannabis?
Next big thing, that's I think blends, blended rosins, blended carts, blended flavors. We've seen this with the alcohol world where they start taking, you know, craft things and blending them together to get these new profiles, and ultimately I think that's what we'll see for cannabis. At least that's what I'd like to see. I've started playing around with some of that myself. I've got my Big Bertha JMO cut that I've been blending with the critical mass because the two really marry together nicely. The JMO's got that sort of garlicky funk undertone with the critical mass being a really strong terpene profile, and when I put them together it's just this really nice sort of funky gas flavor, but also because the textures of the two plants are so wildly different, marrying them two together gives me a nice, well, texture for that rosin, for that end product. So I'd like to see blends. That would be something pretty cool.
Awesome answer, and I myself really think that blends could be the way to go for some of these really cool new products. That being said, Matt, thank you so much for stopping by the show today. Definitely a pleasure to have you.
Glad to be here. Thanks again.
Guys, I'm out.